Hey everyone, it's Triple Mango Threat or Ashley, and today we're talking about 5 unique commander decks. There's going to be 4 under $100 and 1 under $300. If you'd like to purchase any of these decks, they'll all be in the description down below. So starting with Damia, Sage of Stone, this is a deck based on a landfall theme, and it's the Commander's Quarters original deck. It's a ton of fun, and this deck takes advantage of, at our upkeep, we can refill our hand back to 7. We just can't draw at our draw step. So playing additional lands helps us get there. We have Arboreal Grazer, Budoka Gardener, Elvish Piper, and Llanowar Scout. These 4 let us put a land from our hand onto the battlefield, which is great for the budget side of this deck. Exploration is a card, but it's also over $20, and these are each less than $1. We also have Krosan Wayfarer, Patron of the Moon, Skyshroud Ranger, and Walking Atlas. Again, we're putting lands from our hand onto the battlefield, and what's cool about Patron of the Moon is that we can pay 1 mana to put 2 lands from our hand onto the battlefield tapped, and that is super powerful. Paying 1 mana to ramp, as long as we have those 2 lands in our hand, is going to be awesome, and it's very doable when we have 41 lands in the deck. So 2 of the best cards in the deck are going to be Null Profusion and Recycle. These are the same exact card, except one is black and one is green. They cost the same, 4 and 2 colors. We're going to skip our draw step. Whenever we play a card, we draw a card. So that means whenever we cast it, we draw, and we have a maximum hand size of 2. What's neat is that our commander also says we skip our draw step, so this doesn't hurt us at all. Casting a card lets us draw a card, and our max hand size down to 2 is great because we're going to draw 5 at our upkeep, and so Damia is really going to take advantage of this. So if you enjoy playing additional lands, drawing so many cards, and even a small discard theme, definitely look into this one. Next, we're talking about zadahedron Grinder. This is Tomer's deck from MTG Commander, originally to be $25 for the deck, but of course time effects magic cards, and it does cost around $40 now. Zada is very powerful, and it takes advantage of our instants and sorceries targeting our commander, and we can then copy those to each other creature we control. So with the token theme helping accomplish this, we have cards like Dragon Fodder, Empty the Warrens, Firecat Blitz, and Goblin War Party. Whatever the token is, we just care about creatures because we want to keep getting better copies with the more creatures we have. There's also Hordling Outburst, Honor the God Pharaoh, Krenko's Command, and Kadoltha Rebirth. So with all of these tokens, we're going to start taking advantage of card draw, and we can do this for 1 or 2 red mana. We have things like Accelerate. This is an instant that gives a creature haste until end of turn, and we get to draw a card. So when we target our commander with Accelerate, let's say we have 9 other tokens, so we have 10 creatures on the battlefield total, we will be able to draw 10 cards because we're going to copy this for each other creature we control. So 10 cards for 2 mana is silly and very powerful. Same with Boiling Blood. Target creature attacks this turn if able, and we're going to draw a card. Now while this is 3 mana, we're also giving the possibility of losing our creatures because they're going to attack. Downhill Charge is really cool. We can sacrifice a mountain rather than pay the cost, and target creature is going to get +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of mountains we control. There's also Expedite, which is a better version of Accelerate by just being the 1 red mana. Target creature gains haste until end of turn, and we get to draw a card. And usually how we're going to end up winning the game is with this card, Fists of Flame. For 1 and a red, we draw a card, and until end of turn, target creature gains trample and +1/+0 for each card you've drawn this turn. So a very powerful deck and on a budget. Speaking of Tomer and on a budget, there's another one of his decks I recommend, which is Gargos, Vicious Watcher. Again, this is meant to be $25, but now is around $40, and this isn't exactly Hydra Tribal like most decks. This is a deck that wants its creatures to be targeted, and we get to fight with our commander Gargos. We also have ways to draw cards, and we can do that with certain creatures like Gnarlback Rhino. So whenever a spell targets Gnarlback Rhino, we get to draw a card, and it's a 4/4 trample. And whenever we have our commander out as well as Gnarlback Rhino, whenever we target our commander or Gnarlback Rhino, we're going to start being able to fight creatures with our commander. We're drawing cards. It's a great system. And with the creatures we have in the deck, we can start drawing cards through combat. So whenever we have Keeper of Fables out, whenever 1 or more non-human creatures we control deal combat damage to a player, we're going to get to draw a card. There's also Occam Adversary, that whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we get to draw a card. There's also Orin Viper. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we get to draw. We have Regal Force that says whenever it enters the battlefield, we'll draw a card for each green creature we control. There's Voice of Many. When it enters the battlefield, we'll draw a card for each opponent who controls fewer creatures than us. And we also have Drum Hunter, so at the beginning of our end step, if we control a creature with power 5 or greater, which our commander meets that need, we may draw a card, and it's also a mana dork. So we can start targeting our creatures with cards like Aspect of Hydra. So for 1 green mana, we can have target creature get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is our devotion to green, and our commander already meets 3 of that, which is very powerful. We have Blossoming Defense. We can give a creature +2/+2 and hexproof until end of turn. There's also Hunter's Insight, which will help us with card draw. Target creature we control is going to start drawing his cards whenever they deal combat damage to a player or planeswalker this turn. We draw that many cards. So if our commander hits a player or Planeswalker, we can draw 8 cards. It also has Vigilance, which is very powerful. There's Invigorate, which instead of casting this spell, we can control a forest, and we can have an opponent gain 3 life, and target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. Ultimately, what's important is that we're targeting our creatures so our commander can start fighting stuff, and we just take advantage of all of that. Speaking of targeting our creatures, we have Whipsilk, which is an enchantment for 1 green that says the enchanted creature may block as though it had flying, but more importantly, we can pay a green to return this back to our hand. So for 2 mana, we can keep repeating this, targeting our creatures, having our creatures fight things, and also if we need, we can give a creature reach. Now, there are Hydras in here, but again, this isn't Hydra Tribal, so there's only a few to mention. We have Genesis Hydra, Hydra Omnivore, and Nesting Wilds Ravager. What's cool is that our commander's already going to take off that 4 mana less to cast these creatures, so we can end up paying just 2 mana for these, or like Genesis Hydra, that's 4 mana we don't have to pay, still just paying the 2 green, and we can pay more into it as well. Next up, we're talking about a deck that I built. This is Kazul, Tyrant of the Cliffs. This deck cares about forced combat, and if our opponents happen to swing at us, we get to create 3/3 ogres if they don't pay 3 mana for each creature attacking us. We get to force combat with Warmonger Hellkite, Rage Nimbus, Heckling Fiends, and Goblin Diplomats. By making our opponent's creatures attack, it is likely they could attack an opponent, which is completely fine. That's just more life that we don't have to work on attacking our opponents with. But remember, if they do attack us, we get those 3/3 ogres. So whenever we're creating those tokens, we can rely on cards like Warstorm Surge. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under our control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. So we're creating essentially lightning bolts whenever we create those 3/3 ogres. So if an opponent happens to attack us with 3 creatures that we forced them to or haven't forced them, and they decide not to pay 9 mana because they have to pay for each creature attacking us, we then get 9 damage to deal to whatever target. This can be our opponents, the creatures attacking us, whatever we want. And we still get those 3/3s, which is very powerful. So we also take advantage of making these tokens with Relentless Assault. This is going to let us untap all of our creatures that attack this turn, and after this main phase, there's an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. So we're able to attack with those creatures we just made when it's our turn again. We can also take advantage of all these creatures with cards like Battle Hymn. We now have a red mana for each creature we control. And if we need to board wipe, since we're already promoting creatures towards chain reaction, that's going to make it easier to kill all the creatures that we need to, especially because this is a very cheap and affordable board wipe, not just money-wise, but mana cost as well. It deals X to each creature, where X is the number of creatures on the battlefield. So if there's 10 creatures, for 4 mana, we deal 10 damage to each creature. Super cool. So we can bring Monarch into the game with cards like Emberwald Captain and Court of Ire. And what's really cool about Monarch is that this promotes everybody to start hitting each other, so our opponents may think it's worth to swing at us. We even get to make that token if they don't pay 3 mana, because Monarch's going to let us draw a card at the beginning of our end step. And we also get some nice rewards if we are the Monarch with these cards. The last deck I want to talk about is originally from Dan from my Discord. This is his Min Wily Illusionist deck. This deck is Illusion Tribal, and it wants to draw at least 2 cards on everyone's turn. And it's no joke because it gets out of hand whenever Min can stay on the battlefield. Now, besides drawing cards to make our illusions, we can play cards like Archmage Emeritus. Whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we're drawing a card, and this can have us drawing cards on our opponent's turn as well. There's Curiosity Crafter. Whenever a creature token deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card. Whenever Illusory Ambusher is dealt damage, we draw that many cards. Or we also have cards like Opt, which is for 1 blue, we get to scry 1 and draw a card. Now, we can make our illusion tokens that are made with Min unblockable with creatures like Tetsuko Umezawa Fugitive. This now makes creatures we control with power or toughness 1 or less unblockable. And this is great because the illusions that we're making with Min get +1/+0 for each other illusion we control, especially because they're 1/1s. And also, whenever an illusion we control dies, we can put a permanent card with mana value less than or equal to that creature's power from our hand onto the battlefield. So huge illusions can get us huge permanents. Or we can always drop lands, which we have 33 of them. So this can really take advantage of if there happens to be a board wipe, we're still going to be able to come back from it. Now, to guarantee that we're drawing cards on each player's turn, we have cards like Behold the Multiverse, Brainstorm, Chemister's Insight, and Archmage Charm. These all let us draw at least 2 cards and their instance, so we're going to be able to cover that. So we'll be able to make some illusions with our commander. If they happen to die later in the game, we get to put permanents from our hand onto the battlefield, less than or equal to their power. That is super cool. And if you want to look into more commander decks to try out, check out this video right here. I talk about the most fun commanders to play, and they're not too mean, so your commander group can put up with them. So be sure to check out that video, and thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.